Right, ladies, so now having completed your compass part, we just have a couple of bits to do now. And the first one of those is to put in the central circle, and then we need to set it finally into the square block. So you now need, this is the circle part of that's left of all the stuff that you cut out, all the shapes and things that you cut out. So in order to make your circle part, you want to press this piece of freezer paper, remember shiny side down, press it onto your chosen background fabric on the wrong side of the fabric initially, and make sure that you have enough space to get a 1/4 inch seam allowance all the way around. And then I'm going to mark the 1/4 inch seam allowance all the way around it, and then I'll show you what to do next. So I measured all the way around, well, measured at intervals all the way around the circle, 1/4 inch out, and then just basically freehand joined up the dots. And what I'm going to do next is just to make a couple of wee marks just at the where the kind of sections are there, just so that when I come to reposition this, I get it in the right place. So just a wee mark at each piece, because what you're going to do now is you're going to peel off this freezer paper and you're going to pop it back on the other way up, so that the shiny side is up. So that, and those wee marks just help me to put it back in place. And I just need to pin this in place for the moment with a couple of pins. Just to hold it where we need it to be. Go. Okay, so now that you've got the pins in, what we want to do now is to use the sticky side of the freezer paper to create this circle. So you're just going to flip that over, fold it over the edge there and iron it down. And you can just kind of push it up all the way around, and you'll get a few crinkles just round the edge there, but don't worry about it. Just press them in. Try not to get too much of the freezer paper on your iron, because it might make it a wee bit sticky, but you can see that okay. I'll just turn it around a wee bit so as you can see what I'm doing. So just, if your freezer paper's been a bit stubborn by now, just keep going. It'll hold it there long enough for you to get it to do what you need it to do. So you just want to press that down, give it a good press. It's holding it in place long enough. We just need this long enough because we're going to applique this to the top of your compass. So just go all the way around there and press that down, and I'll show you the next. This is what it should look like once it's pressed. It's not completely stuck down onto the freezer paper, but don't worry about that. The important thing is that you have a good crease around here and that you have a nice kind of circle shape. Try and not have any little pointy bits like that. Just go back over it and give it another little press if you need to. And then what we do from there is you need to now bring your compass, your mariner's compass piece, and we're going to lay this on over here, and we're going to hand applique it round. Now what you need to do is just to get this as evenly spaced as possible. The ideal thing would be that every single point would just touch up to here. In reality that might not happen, so don't worry about it. Just get it as close as you can, just get it as evenly, sitting as evenly as you can, and then pin that edge around here. So you pin and finger, not good. So you're just going to pin that onto there, onto the seam allowance that's sitting underneath now, and pin that all the way around. And then you need to do a very neat hand applique stitch, which I will show you in a second. Okay, so now I've got that pinned in place. I've checked the other side to make sure that everything's covered, that it is actually covering the hole properly. And we're going to start with a thread that matches the top one, because that's where you're most likely to see it. And I'm just going to do a quilter's knot here. I don't know if you remember how to do that. Let me see if you can see that. Okay, so your needle in your left hand if you're right-handed. Lay the long end of your thread along the needle and grip it. Wrap it around 2 or 3 times and then pull that, still gripping tightly, pull the wrapped piece down between your fingers and hold tight and pull the needle through, and you get a nice neat knot at the far end rather than a big globy one. So I'm going to start by catching this underneath, just so that you can't see the knot. So I'm going to catch it underneath here with my thimble. And you're just going to make tiny stitches. I've started with the thread in the bottom cloth, which that will be underneath. You won't actually see it. So I'm going to put the thread into the fabric underneath and just bring it up right on the edge of the circle piece, and just do a tiny little knot. And then I'm going to go back in where I put just adjacent to where the thread has come out. I'm going to go back in there underneath and then bring my needle up. Oops. Just a fraction further along. You just want to do tiny stitches. So just, I don't know, 1/8 of an inch or so further along, but right at the edge again. And that creates a tiny stitch that you won't actually see. And then so you just continue doing that all the way around. So put your needle in adjacent to where the threads come out and bring it up just 1/8 of an inch or so further along, right on the edge of the fabric. And you're just creating tiny stitches that you really can't see. Now, hand stitching this doesn't actually take that long, but I know some of you find hand stitching a little bit tedious, and that's fine. If you'd rather finish it off a different way, then it's perfectly okay. I remind you that there are no such things as the quilt police. So if you prefer to finish this off somehow by machine, then that's okay. If you wanted to do it by machine, you could easily run round this edge with a small zigzag stitch, or maybe even a decorative stitch if you prefer to try that. If you were going to do that though, I would definitely recommend that you have a go on a scrap piece of fabric first, because you'll have put a lot of work into this block and you certainly don't want to spoil it by not finishing it in a way that you would like. But if you would prefer to have a go at finishing it, stitching this circle in by machine, then by all means have a go and do that. Right, all sewn in now. As you can see, the stitches aren't very visible. If you look closely enough, you'll see them, but I'm hoping nobody's going to be lying face down on my quilt at any point, so hopefully they'll not see that too closely. The next thing to do is just to flip it back over, take your pins out and remove the piece of freezer paper. Okay, well, a nice wee press, that'll look great, and then finally we just have to set it into the square.